Hey everyone, welcome back for another deep dive. Today we're going to be looking at a story that, honestly, when I first saw it, I was just like, what is going on here?
Yeah.
Students getting arrested for setting up a book stall.
It's certainly a headline that makes you want to learn more.
Yeah, I mean, what could be more wholesome than a book stall, right?
Yeah, seems like a pretty safe activity.
So this happened in Gwadar, Balochistan.
Okay.
And the source that we're going to be looking at today is from the Friday Times.
Right?
It's an article titled, 4 Students Arrested in Gwadar for Organizing Book Stall.
Oh.
And this was published today, January 26th, 2025.
Very recent.
So let's dive into this story and see what we can uncover.
Sounds good.
So the event was called Kitab Karawan, and it was put on by the Baloch Students Action Committee, or BSAC.
All right.
And their goal was to promote educational awareness and access to books in Balochistan.
Mm-hmm.
But then things took a bit of a turn.
Right. I mean, just to kind of set the stage a little bit, Balochistan has a very complex history, as I'm sure you know. It's the largest province in Pakistan.
Right.
It's very resource-rich, but it's also the least developed.
Yeah.
There has been long-standing tension between the local population and the central government.
Right. Kind
of a feeling of marginalization. And Gwadar, specifically, where this book stall incident took place, is a key port city.
Right.
It's seen a lot of investment and development in recent years, but that's also brought its own set of challenges.
Yeah.
And sometimes exacerbated these existing tensions.
Yeah, it sounds like setting up a book stall, maybe in Gwadar, is not as simple as it would be in other places.
Yeah, you really have to think about the context there.
Yeah, so, okay, maybe it's not as simple as it sounds, but still arrested. I mean,
Yeah.
The article says that the police claimed that the books had provocative content and were causing a traffic jam.
Provocative content, huh?
I know, provocative. Were these not just like regular books?
Right. What does that even mean in this context?
Yeah, and traffic, really.
Yeah.
It seems like a bit of a stretch to shut down a book stall for a few cars.
It does raise some questions for sure.
Yeah, like what is considered provocative? I mean, that can change so drastically depending on, where you are in the world, the political climate, the cultural norms.
Absolutely.
And the article doesn't really specify the types of books.
Right. So we're left to wonder.
Yeah. So, I mean, were they political in nature? Did they touch on some kind of sensitive religious or social topics?
Mm-hmm.
Or, and this is a big question, was provocative content just a convenient excuse to stop this gathering for some other reason?
Yeah, that's the question, isn't it?
Yeah. And it gets even more complicated because the article mentions that the students weren't just asked to pack up and leave, they were harassed.
Oh, wow.
And there are videos of this whole thing that have gone viral online.
So this is really getting some attention.
Yeah, and there's a real sense of injustice that's brewing online.
I can imagine.
And plus, on top of all of this, the official report, the FIR, claims that the book stall was blocking traffic.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, come on. I've seen book fairs set up in, like, the busiest cities in the world. Surely there's a way to, manage a little bit of traffic.
Right. It's not like it's a permanent structure.
Yeah, so it makes you wonder, is this traffic concern genuine?
Right.
Or is it a convenient justification for something else?
Yeah, I mean, you're right to point that out. It's possible that the traffic disruption was a legitimate factor.
Yeah.
But I think when we look at the wider context here, Balochistan's history, the sensitivities surrounding Gwadar's development, it's understandable why people might be questioning the authorities' motives.
Yeah.
And I think it really highlights kind of a fundamental tension here, which is how do we balance maintaining order with protecting basic freedoms?
Right.
Where do we draw the line?
It's a tough question.
Yeah, it's a really tough question.
Yeah, and this wasn't just like a one-off event either.
Oh, really?
The article mentions similar incidents in other cities, Taunsa, Naseerabad, Hub Chowki, where students who are trying to promote education have faced some kind of pushback.
So it seems like it's not an isolated incident.
Yeah, this is starting to look like a pattern, not just an isolated incident.
Yeah. And if that's the case, it raises some curious concerns.
Mm-hmm.
If there is a deliberate effort to squash educational initiatives,
Right.
particularly ones that are run by students.
Yeah.
I mean, think about the message that sends.
Yeah.
If you're a student in Balochistan and you want to do something positive, you want to organize an event, you want to share some books, how likely are you to go ahead with that?
Right.
Knowing that this could happen.
Yeah.
There's a real risk of discouraging activism, creating what they call a chilling effect.
Yeah.
Where people are just afraid to speak up or to take action.
Right, because they're afraid of facing the same consequences.
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, and the reaction online has been pretty intense.
I bet.
I mean, social media is exploding with outrage.
Yeah.
Protests are popping up all over, and there's just this huge push to get these students released.
Well, and that's what's so interesting about this whole incident, right?
Yeah.
It really highlights the power of social media,
Right.
especially for communities that have historically been ignored or marginalized.
Right.
It's a way to kind of bypass the traditional channels.
Right.
Get your message out there and demand accountability from those in power.
Yeah.
In the past, something like this might have happened quietly without much attention.
Right.
But now, thanks to the internet and social media, it's a lot harder to sweep these things under the rug.
But claiming a traffic obstruction seems like a pretty common tactic to suppress dissent.
Yeah.
So how can we differentiate genuine concerns from pretext in this case?
Well, that's a good point, and it's something that we should always be aware of. Traffic concerns are often cited to justify shutting down protests or gatherings,
Right.
even when there might be other motivations at play.
Yeah.
So in this case, without more information, it's really difficult to say for certain whether the traffic disruption was the primary reason for the police intervention or simply a convenient excuse.
Yeah, it's like this digital megaphone,
Right.
It's giving these students and their supporters a voice that they might not have had otherwise. So how do you think this whole incident reflects the power dynamics between citizens and authorities, especially in a place like Balochistan?
Well, it's a delicate balance, isn't it?
Yeah.
On the one hand, you have the authorities who are responsible for maintaining order and security.
Right.
But on the other hand, you have citizens with fundamental rights.
Right.
The right to express themselves,
Yeah.
the right to assemble peacefully, and this situation in Gwadar suggests that those rights might be under threat.
Right.
Particularly when exercising those rights challenges the official narrative or disrupts the established order.
Yeah, I mean that's a good point. And social media, while it can amplify voices,
On the one hand, you have the students who simply wanted to promote education and make books accessible. On the other hand, you have the police claiming provocative content and traffic obstruction.
Yeah.
The truth probably lies somewhere in between.
Right.
It's like we're piecing together a puzzle.
Yeah. So what questions would you ask to get a clearer picture of what happened here? What would help us kind of move beyond the headlines and the sound bites?
I mean, I think the first thing I would want to know more about is the books themselves.
Yeah.
What exactly was in them that was deemed so provocative? Was it political dissent? Was it something that challenged religious views or something else entirely?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd also want to hear from the students directly. What was their experience like? Did they feel like their rights were violated?
Right.
And then zooming out a little bit, I'd want to look at the bigger picture. Have there been other instances of authorities cracking down on educational initiatives in Balochistan?
Yeah.
Is there a pattern of suppressing dissenting voices?
Yeah, it's like detective work almost.
Right.
Gathering the clues, looking for connections, trying to understand the motivations behind the actions.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it's not just about this one incident in Gwadar. This raises much broader questions about censorship access to education.
Right.
And this delicate balance between security and freedom.
Yeah.
If promoting education can lead to arrests, what does that say about a society?
Yeah. So what does this all mean for our listener?
Right.
How does this event connect to these bigger discussions about censorship education and the right to assemble peacefully? What can we do to make sure that promoting education isn't treated like a crime?
Those are the million-dollar questions, and unfortunately, there are no easy answers. It requires us to be engaged citizens,
Yeah.
to stay informed, to question assumptions, and to challenge injustice wherever we see it.
Yeah.
We can't be passive observers. We need to be active participants in shaping a society where education is truly valued and where freedom of expression is protected, not suppressed.
Couldn't agree more. This situation in Gwadar is a stark reminder that these issues aren't just abstract concepts.
Right.
They have real-world consequences and they demand our attention.
And if we connect this to the even bigger picture, events like this can be a catalyst for change. They can spark important conversations, raise awareness, and mobilize people to demand greater transparency and accountability from those in power.
So true. And remember, knowledge is power.
Absolutely.
The more we understand these complex issues, the better equipped we are to have these meaningful conversations and contribute to finding solutions.
Exactly. Keep asking questions, keep seeking information, and keep the conversation going.
Well, that brings us to the end of our deep dive today. Thanks for joining us on this journey. We hope you learned something new, or at least had your curiosity piqued. Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep diving deep.